It has been a couple months, so you know what time it is. Play the book haul jingle. We have quite the eclectic mix of books today to look at, including the most expensive book I have ever bought, so I'm looking forward to showing you that. However, let's start off with Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. Now, I made a bit of a mistake with this book. I was looking at all the different versions of this book and I wasn't a huge fan of a lot of the covers that were available, and when I found this one, I thought, great. And it was probably the 4th or 5th listing on the site, so I thought that'll be fine. What I didn't realise was that this is in English, but is for French readers who are learning English, so it has French translations for some of the phrases in the margins, so the formatting is really weird. Because of that, I did end up getting the audiobook. It was a dramatized version of the audiobook, and I listened to it and I really enjoyed it. So this is a fantastic book. I may return this because I don't see the point in keeping it when the formatting is so bizarre. So I wasn't ever going to read from this copy. However, I did really enjoy this story. I know this is not a fantasy book. However, I did go to a themed dinner that was kind of a murder mystery thing. So I did want to read Murder on the Orient Express, which takes some influence for this dinner. So yes, this is a mainly fantasy channel, but I do occasionally try other things. Very rarely. Next one up, I bought a copy of The Curse of Soulwalker by Sharon Elwood. And Sharon Elwood is also here on YouTube under ASMR Glow. I've talked with her a couple times and she is just one of the nicest people. So I was really excited to check out her book. And she does have a kind of artwork illustration, somewhat animated trailer for the book, which is really what sold me into buying a copy. It's really cool. I will leave it linked in the description if you want to know more about The Curse of Soulwalker. I think that's a really good way to kind of get a stylistic synopsis, because the trailer is just super cool. So I am looking forward to reading this, and I must say, I do really like the artwork as well. And not only that, but it has an awesome map. Really cool map. And the next book I want to show you has been behind me this whole clip. And that is... Can I do this without turning? Yep. The Black Mantle by me. I've had this for a while, but since the last book haul video, I did receive physical copies of The Black Mantle, including hardback and paperback. This is the second book in my dark epic fantasy trilogy, and I am so proud of it. I'm really proud of this book. The first being Harbinger of Justice, if you're new. He's quite a chunky fantasy book, it's 600 pages long, and just like Harbinger of Justice, the hardbacks do have the art on the naked hardbacks. I love being able to do this because you do just get to see the art without all the design work around it. It's just absolutely stunning. The art is by Felix Ortiz, and he just constantly nails it. I am probably a little biased, but I do think that this is one of my favorite pieces from him. And of course, I do have some emotional connection to the piece because I wrote the book, but I am really impressed with the art of this. And it is available now in paperback, ebook, and hardback on pretty much every platform, from Amazon to Barnes & Noble, Waterstones, Blackwell's. It should be available in most retailers. And Broken Binding do also stock signed copies, so if you're looking for a signed copy, that's where to go. And with book 2 now finished, I am starting work on book 3, and I'm constantly trying to up my skills as a writer. And one of the ways I am doing that is I'm currently working through Saba Tahir's class over on Skillshare, who are very kindly sponsoring this video. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives, with thousands of classes led by industry experts across film, illustration, design, freelance, productivity, and more. Skillshare can help you take your career, skills, hobbies, passions, or side hustles to the next level. And like I said, I am currently taking Saba Tahir's class, who is the author of An Ember in the Ashes, which is super cool to see someone like her, who's very established and a fantasy writer, making classes on writing itself. One of the things that's become a real game changer for me as a writer is having a consistent writing practice, and a huge help for that is also watching someone like Ali Abdaal's classes on productivity and also just time management overall. He has a number of really good classes that are well worth checking out and have been a huge help for me personally. And the first 500 people who use the link in the description will get 1 month free trial of Skillshare, so you can get started today. Thank you so much Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Next on up, I did buy a copy of Defiant by Brandon Sanderson. Now this is the 4th book in his Skyward series. I have read the first 3, so I just needed the 4th because I need to read it. I'll be honest, I have been on the fence about finishing this series because I was not a huge fan of Cytonic. I really enjoyed Skyward. The 2nd book, Starsight, was pretty good, I also fairly enjoyed, but I just wasn't a fan of Cytonic. I have heard the 4th book is better, and it does come back to a similar level of enjoyment for a lot of people as the first 2 books, and because I've read 3 of 4, I feel like I need to finish it. And Sanderson is known for his endings. He's known for his Sanderlanches, so I'm hopeful. I do now have a copy, so I can read it. When will I get to it? I have no idea, but I do need to finish this series. Part of my issue with Cytonic and also partly Starsight is that we do move away from a lot of the key players in the cast, which was really sad because I liked the camaraderie of the first book and sort of the building of relationships between the main characters. So I'm really hopeful that we're going back to that main cast in book 4. So if you have read Defiant, I would be interested to know, what did you think? Is it worth me reading this? I will probably read it eventually, but if I get really hyped up about it, I will read it sooner. So let me know what you thought if you have read it. Next on up, I was very kindly sent a copy of Blood over Brighthaven. And this is absolutely stunning. This is from Broken Binding, and it just blew me away when I saw this art. I am a huge ML Wong fan. After Sword of Kaigen, I adored this book, and I mention it quite a bit on this channel. So I've been meaning to pick this up for quite a while now. And as soon as Broken Binding kind of unveiled this stunning edition, I was so happy when I managed to get a copy. I mean, just look at the art. Absolutely stunning. I do like how this sort of red smoke magic blends onto the sprayed edge. And just this art style and the level of detail in the background, especially even on the back of the cover, it looks absolutely beautiful. I really like the homage on the naked hardback to the traditionally published version cover as well. And it really came along at a perfect time because we did do a buddy read over on the Discord in February for Blood over Brighthaven. So this arrived kind of towards the end of February. It was kind of like the perfect time because everybody was chatting about it and reading it. And I will say, the first chapter is one of the best openings to a fantasy book I have read in a long time. That was such a thrilling opening to a book. Next on up, I bought a copy of The Way of Aidan by Philip Chase. I bought this from Broken Binding. Again, this is a Broken Binding edition. The cover by Rennie is just absolutely beautiful. I love this art. It really captures the classic fantasy feel very well. It has this really nice crow bird design on the naked hardback with the gold as well that goes onto the sprayed edges. And this is one of their indie press editions, which means it has a ton of interior art as well, which just looks absolutely incredible. I'm kind of assuming that everybody knows who Philip Chase is on here. However, if you don't, Philip Chase does have a YouTube channel. He is like the gentleman of booktube, just one of the nicest people. And I've heard a lot of amazing things about this series, so it's been on my TBR for quite a while. So again, this was a case of, I really want to read this already, and I really like Philip, so I'm just going to buy this and hopefully get to it soon. Who doesn't love some classic fantasy? Next on up, I don't think I can throw this one, it's too heavy. I completely forgot to take this next one out of the plastic cover. And I know a lot of people like to keep it kind of wrapped up to protect it, but I don't really resell books. I buy them because I love them and I want to read them, so I prefer to take the wrappings off. You can tell me if that makes me psychotic or not. Do people leave them on? But this next book is 11th Cycle by Kian and Ardalan, which is another Broken Binding indie press edition. This book sounds incredibly unique. It does take some of these storytelling ideas and foundations from series like Dark Souls, which is a video game series, and I do also do a fair bit of gaming outside of this channel. I don't really talk about it much on here, but I do love the Dark Souls games and Elden Ring, and I believe the author did want to capture some of that tone and atmosphere, but also kind of some of the storytelling principles, using a lot of environmental storytelling in a novel. So I do think this is going to be a very unique read. He did release it, and now the press edition, and I think even the standard editions from now on, have an updated version of the text. So he did do some extra editing even after this came out. So I've been holding out until now to get this updated text, but I'm really interested to read this one. I think the art is absolutely stunning. I love the sprayed edges. The sprayed edges really got me with this one. I love the detail and kind of the atmosphere that builds off of with the setting. It's pretty simple, but it's so effective. I also love the naked hardback. It looks great. And just like the other press editions, it does also contain some interior artwork that just looks incredible. Since I heard about the premise of this book, I've always kind of wanted to see some art for it, so it's really cool that we've got some of these interior pieces as well. And they do look really, really good. Next one up, the third and final book in the Three Body Problem series or trilogy has arrived, part of the Broken Binding sci-fi subscription. And this is another one that's absolutely huge. This book is massive. I am majorly impressed with this set. I think it looks great. I love the colors on it. I love the cover design, but in particular, I really, really like the sprayed edges on this one. Again, I really love how simple but effective these sprayed edges are. I think my favorite might still be Three Body Problem, the first one. The cover is just beautiful, but I do like all three covers. I'm only now noticing this as I'm filming this clip, but the middle book is translated by Joe Martinson, and the other two are done by Ken Liu. I just thought Ken Liu translated all three, but apparently the middle one, Dark Forest, has a different translator. It's interesting. And I do really like this quote on the back: "Time is the cruelest force of all." Next one up is a new release, and that is Dance of Shadows by Gaurav Mohanty. Now this is the sequel to Sons of Darkness, and these covers are so damn cool. I was sent this by Broken Binding, so it is a Broken Binding edition with these really nice sprayed edges. But this is a Grimdark fantasy series that takes a lot of inspiration from A Song of Ice and Fire by George R. R. Martin. But it does take a lot of inspiration from Indian mythology. So that's a really interesting part that really drew me to this series, is the fact that it kind of has some Indian mythology woven into this story, which is a mythology I don't know much about, which makes this really interesting just to get this new culture infused with fantasy that I'm really looking forward to reading. Sons of Darkness has been on my TBR for far too long. I've been meaning to get to this. It's one of those books that I really, really want to read, but just my TBR always seems to be too full. But now that the sequel's out, I have no excuse. I need to get around to reading this series, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. Next one up, we have The Mask of Mirrors, the Broken Binding subscription book for February. Now, this is a trilogy I do not hear many people talking about, but the people who do talk about it seem to love it. So I'm really glad that more people are talking about it because of this edition coming out. And I do think the art is absolutely stunning. I'm not a huge fan of the art on the traditionally published covers. It's just not my style, but I do like this art a lot. What I hadn't realized when I heard people talking about this book is it actually is co-written. There's two authors. M.A. Carrick is a pseudonym, or pen name is a better word, pen name for two authors. This sounds really atmospheric and rather dark, and kind of got this sort of dark academia vibe to it. At least that's what I'm getting from the synopsis and what I've heard about it, meaning it would probably be a good autumn read. So I may read this in autumn. We'll see. Okay, next we have a set, and then after that we'll get to the most expensive book I have ever bought. But that set is none other than Malazan Book of the Fallen, the Broken Binding editions of the first three books. I don't think I need to say much about Malazan. It is a hugely popular series. Especially recently here on booktube, it has really picked up in its popularity. It has become one of these legendary status series, I would say, in recent years. And this set has new covers from Felix Ortiz. I do really, really like the art on these. It has this battle scene on the sprayed edges, and I really, really like the art on the naked hardbacks. I'm not sure what material they are using for the naked hardbacks, but it feels really, really nice, and I really like it. Kind of has a old-timey sort of textured look to it book, while still really showing off these beautiful pieces of art. There's one in particular, I think it's Deadhouse Gates. Yeah, here we go, Deadhouse Gates. This just makes me think of the art of Gandalf in front of the Mines of Moria with kind of it lit up in blue. It just looks super, super cool, almost like something out of Lord of the Rings. This series was almost the channel read-along for 2025, but it did just get beaten by Sun Eater just by a couple votes. So we might read this next year. I might read book 1 before the end of the year. I don't know, but I'm really looking forward to delving into this series. Now, some of you might have already guessed this last book, or books, should I say, when I said it was the most expensive book I have ever bought. That is, of course, the leatherbound editions of Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. Now, I put Stormlight Archive as my favourite series of all time on my top 10 list, and out of that series, Words of Radiance is probably my favourite. So, of course, I had to grab these stunning editions. I've told this story before, but I did buy the leatherbound editions of Way of Kings as a kind of graduation gift to myself. I got money for graduating from friends and family just as a congratulations, and I kind of brought it all together and bought the Way of Kings leatherbound. So it really holds a special place in my heart. So when they was doing book 2, of course, I had to grab a copy as well. But these leatherbound editions are filled with art. I remember reading Words of Radiance, and there is a chapter early on with Shalon. In fact, I think it's the first chapter of the book with the undersea creature. And yeah, there we go. And then it has that piece of art. I don't know what it was. I hadn't read a ton of fantasy. I was getting back into it. But that chapter just had some real wow factor for me as a reader. And I just loved it so much. And I love that piece of art. I think it really just breathed some life into the world with the different creatures, and it's something I've tried to bring to my own writing. Just that sense of wonder and awe of what could be in this world, what could be out there, and what could you find if you explored it. And I think Words of Radiance just did that for me, and it came along just at the right time. And the book just means a lot to me. I really, really love this book. So it's rare I would ever spend this type of money on a book, but this is probably my favorite book of all time. So I'm really, really pleased to have these. And at the same time with the Kickstarter, I did also grab Dragonsteel Prime, which was the original writing of Hoyd's backstory. Apparently it's kind of been retconned and it's not canon anymore, but it'd be really interesting just to go back and see what Sanderson was planning at that time. I'm looking forward to reading the new Dragonsteel book when it comes out years and years in the future, but until then, this is going to be a really fun read just to kind of see what he was planning at that time. And I do think that some of this is probably still going to carry through to the final book, just a lot of it isn't. So it's a lot like Way of Kings Prime, which he released with Way of Kings Kickstarter, where it was kind of the early version of Way of Kings before he rewrote the entire thing. So yeah, I just think it's fantastic that an author is happy to put out these earlier editions, and we can just kind of see some of the behind the scenes and the scrapped versions of books. It's something that you don't see from many authors, so it's really cool that Sanderson does it. In my opinion, I really, really like when authors do things like this. That's all the books I got in the last 2 and a bit months. Let me know in the comments which one was your favorite, and let me know which book should I prioritize. I have read a couple of those already, but for the ones I haven't read, which ones should I read first? And thank you very much Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Be sure to be one of the people who get the free month-long trial. Thank you very much for watching. Outro. Whoop.